Connie was in a gloomy mood today. Her yellow sedan was moving along the highway, swaying from side to side, in time with the roughness of the road, like a boat on small waves. Her 7-year-old daughter's voice snapped her out of her gloomy reverie. Tara, seated in her special child seat, asked, "Mum, are we going to work long today? I'm getting hungry." Connie replied, "We'll complete one more order and then take a break for a snack. Can you be patient, sweetheart?" "Sure I can. What's for lunch today? Sandwiches or pancakes?" Tara inquired further. Winking mysteriously at her daughter, Connie responded, "I won't tell you. Let it be a surprise. I'm sure you'll love it." Tara's face lit up with a sweet smile, which is characteristic of all children, and it warmed Connie's heart. So what if I lost my divorce case today? Let my husband choke on his wealth. We don't need it, she thought. As if in agreement with her own sentiment, Connie smiled at her reflection in the rearview mirror and answered the dispatcher's call. 2 passengers, a man and a woman, will be waiting at the bus station entrance. I've already informed them of your car number, the dispatcher said in a well-practiced voice. "Okay, thank you, I'm nearby," she responded, shifting gears. Glancing at Tara, Connie noticed her daughter was dozing off. "She's exhausted, but we only have one more ride before we can take a break," she reassured herself. Connie disliked bringing her daughter to work, but there was no one else to watch her. Connie couldn't afford a nanny yet. As for her mother, she lived in the village and worked on a local farm from dawn to dusk, providing for her youngest son, who used a wheelchair. Connie's brother used to be a tractor driver, but after a road accident, he became wheelchair-bound. His wife left him, and the only family left to help were Connie and their mother, so there was no way to leave there a lively child like Tara, who always needed supervision. Connie spotted the passengers the dispatcher mentioned immediately. They stood there holding small travel bags. The couple appeared to be in their early 30s. Probably a family, Connie mused with a touch of envy. The couple greeted her politely and settled comfortably behind her, softly closing the door without a slam. This pleased Connie. They were respectable customers who took care of her car and didn't unnecessarily slam the doors. Upon seeing the sleeping child in the front seat, the strangers spoke in hushed whispers. "Could you take us to the cheapest hotel in the area?" the man asked in a low voice. Connie nodded in understanding. "Sure. There's a hotel called Mary. They provide good service and their prices are reasonable. I stayed there with my daughter for a while." "We're truly grateful," the passenger responded. Silence filled the cabin. With over a year in her profession, Connie had learned to adapt to her clients. If a talkative passenger came on board, she had a range of stories ready, funny or sad, long or short. If the passenger preferred silence, she remained quiet, enjoying the steady hum of the engine or soft music. On this occasion, she decided not to turn on the radio, allowing Tara to sleep a little longer, hoping she'd wake up rejuvenated. While Connie was driving, the passengers began to whisper behind her. Having long grown accustomed to this, she usually let people's chatter wash over her. However, this time was different. They mentioned her ex-husband's surname. The first to speak was a man. "Well, are you all ready? Is Manzarello sure he'll hire us?" The woman hesitated before responding. "Yes, don't worry. I've thought of everything. I'll get a job in his office as a cleaner and you can watch him. This time, Scott won't escape. I bet he can't take such a blow." Connie hit the brakes in surprise, causing her yellow car to stall. The sudden stop agitated the passengers, and Connie took a moment to breathe. "Wow, she's got quick reflexes. It's a good thing nobody was behind us. We could have been in trouble." Connie's daughter Tara remained oblivious to the situation, fast asleep in her car seat. "Is something wrong? Why did we stop?" the man asked. Connie quickly regained her composure and replied, "Nothing to worry about. Everything's fine. There was a pothole ahead, so I stopped to avoid it." The passenger shook his head, appearing doubtful, but didn't comment further. The rest of the way, Connie could think of nothing else but the conversation between these two strange passengers. Initially, she even thought they were talking about a different Manzarello, but when the woman mentioned Connie's husband's name, everything clicked. Connie was uncertain about what to do with this newfound information. She quickly surmised that something sinister was being planned against her ex-husband. But what could she do personally? Warn the man who had abandoned her and their daughter, leaving them with practically nothing, or ignore her conscience and accept the situation as it was? She didn't have an answer to that question. Soon the hotel came into view, and the passengers readied to pay the fare. The woman took out her old-looking wallet and handed Connie a couple of bills, a little more than the amount to be paid. "Here, keep the change, buy something for your little one. She's just lovely." Connie smiled bashfully, thanking the client for the tip. Although it was a small amount, it gave her satisfaction. After a quick glance at the strangers, she started the engine and headed to their regular spot on the riverbank, where she and Tara often had a snack. Beyond the woman's will, her thoughts kept circling back to Scott, who had won their divorce proceedings. It wasn't about alimony or business. She didn't need them. What really upset her was the house. They had bought it together, and Connie's mother had invested money too. She'd been saving for years to give it to her daughter for her wedding and give her a solid start. The woman, having experienced hardship in her life, wanted to give her daughter the best she could. It wasn't a fortune, of course, but it was a substantial sum of money. However, Scott saw things differently. During the divorce, he conveniently pretended to forget that the house was bought with joint funds. He got some help, sorted out fake documents, and suddenly he owned the house. Connie was blindsided. Not only was Scott refusing to pay alimony, but he had also taken their house. To add insult to injury, Scott's lawyer presented the court with a DNA test to challenge Scott's paternity of their daughter, Tara. Wait, what test? When did you have time to do it? What the hell is going on? Isn't the mother's consent required in such cases? Exclaimed Connie. In response, the judge called for silence and began to study the documents. It was clear to Connie that the test was fake. After all, Tara could only have one father, Scott, and no one else. Unfortunately, Scott's lawyer had expertly forged the document. They were banking on Connie's surprise and her lack of legal knowledge. She thought the trial was for divorce and alimony, but she ended up losing not only the house, but also payments for her daughter. For Scott, this was a moment of personal triumph. He kissed his mistress in front of Connie, grinning maliciously. He strutted like a peacock in love. All that was missing were the feathers and luxurious tail. Tears streamed down Connie's cheeks. Her husband's betrayal had deeply wounded her. How could you do this? You're depriving your wife and child of a home. How can you look at yourself in the mirror after such an act? Shameful. Scott just grinned. Oh, spare me the guilt trip, Connie. We've been through this already. It's unbearable living with you. There's no excitement, no imagination, just constant boredom. But with Deborah, it's different. She makes my blood boil. She's what a real woman should be, unlike you, a provincial simpleton. At that moment, Connie had a strong urge to slap Scott, but she resisted. There were people around, and what would it change? Connie tried to dismiss the intrusive thoughts. She rubbed her eyes and refocused her attention on the road. She enjoyed the rhythmic hum of the engine and the feeling of unity with the car when driving. Connie had learned to drive in middle school when her grandfather had let her take the wheel of his old car. Of course, the man was always close by, monitoring every move his granddaughter made. Even though her grandfather was no longer alive, she cherished the skills he had taught her. She had learned not only to drive skillfully, but also to identify engine issues by their sounds. And even right now, Connie felt that something was obviously wrong with the car. Nothing critical, but it would be useful to visit to the repair shop after her shift. At that moment, Tara, who was nestled in the child seat, woke up and greeted her mum with a smile. "Mum, are we done yet? Can we take a break?" Connie returned the smile. "Absolutely, we'll take a break. We'll stop at the riverbank near the beach and have lunch." "Finally! I'm starving. I had breakfast this morning, but I'm hungry again." Patting her daughter's shoulder, Connie replied, "Well, you're growing up. Girls grow faster than boys, so your body needs fuel. Wait till you see what I've brought for you." For lunch, Connie had packed not just pancakes but also sandwiches, a combination of Tara's favourite foods. The pancakes were special, filled with cottage cheese and flavoured with raisins. As Tara munched on her lunch, she admired the river. People were swimming, sunbathing and fishing in the reeds a little further away. Connie, however, was not enjoying the river view. She was far away in her thoughts and still could not decide what to do with the information she had heard. Naturally, to go to the police with such information was a foolish idea. What am I going to tell the person on duty? That I overheard someone accepting a cleaning job at my ex-husband's company, and that someone would be watching from the sidelines? That's absurd. Connie hesitated momentarily, and then decided to share this information with her trustworthy friend Patty, who was known for finding the right solutions in challenging situations. However, Patty could be obstinate at times, sticking to her stance stubbornly. During their last conversation, she had adamantly insisted that Connie should file a second lawsuit and conduct an independent DNA test to confirm the relationship between Scott and Tara. Connie sighed dismally. "Why should I do it, Patty? You understand, I don't want to see him or be anywhere near him. I don't need his money either. Do you think it'll bring me happiness? I lived with him for all those years, enduring loneliness, while Scott was constantly on business trips, coming home late and always making excuses." Patty nodded. "It's crystal clear. Men, particularly those with money, can be like that. As soon as they achieve something, they become arrogant and reckless. It's as if a calculator starts running in their hearts, viewing all the attractive women in town as potential lovers with price tags attached to their dresses." Connie gave a wry smile. She understood Patty's opinion a long time ago. Just like Connie, Patty had experienced a painful divorce. However, her husband had been poor and had left her for a wealthy mistress. Afterward, he expressed regret and even attempted to return, but Patty could not forgive his betrayal and shut him out. After her daughter finished lunch, Connie contacted her dispatcher to inform him that she wouldn't take any orders for the day. The man, who was a former cab driver now wheelchair-bound after an accident, understood her situation. Everyone knew Connie seldom ended her day early unless there was a good reason. When Connie first joined their cab company, she was met with ridicule. The company owner had never dealt with a female driver before and decided to test her by assigning her the oldest car in their fleet. As expected, the car was difficult to drive due to constant breakdowns. Consequently, Connie spent most of her time in the workshops, covered in oil and diesel, assisting mechanics in repairing the car. To her credit, the young cab driver never complained about her circumstances, taking whatever was available to her, especially since she didn't have a car. Unbeknownst to her, Connie gradually expanded her repair skills and soon started fixing minor breakdowns by herself. Eventually, her old car started generating a respectable income due to its minimal breakdowns. Her success was often the subject of envy among other cab drivers who didn't understand the secrets to her success: hard work, diligence, and remarkable endurance. Notably, Unlike most female cab drivers, Connie wasn't afraid to accept male passengers. For safety, she kept pepper spray with her. To her luck, she never encountered any outright miscreants. Tipsy men often behaved boisterously and declared their affection for Connie, but it never went beyond that. She responded with a smile, maintaining her polite demeanour, and never escalated the situation. Despite her indifference to tips, she often received them. Regrettably, a significant portion of these funds went to her housing rent, as she and her daughter were left homeless by her former partner, Scott. Her landlady was an eccentric woman, with whom Connie never felt comfortable. From time to time, she made her claims and tried to increase the price of the rent to profit at the expense of the young cab driver. But the woman did not even realize that Connie's earnings were not as great as she thought. After all, the single divorced woman had a daughter growing up, and Connie also dreamed of buying her own car and start a private taxi service, so as not to give most money to her company. The male cab drivers laughed at her ambition. "You're wrong dreaming about going private taxi driver, Connie. Your car will only get ruined and be of no use. Of course, now you are sharing part of your income for the provided car, but any potential costs will be covered by the company. It's much more complicated when you're self-employed." But Connie yearned for freedom and a more flexible schedule than her current one. After her daughter Tara finished eating, Connie handed her a pack of wet wipes to clean her hands. "Mum, where are we going now? Back to work?" Tara asked. "You've guessed wrong," Connie replied with a mysterious smile. "We're going to visit Aunt Patty. She's expecting us. You can play with Tommy on the game console, or play ball in the yard while we chat." Tara's eyes lit up with joy. "Wow, you've made my day. Not only did you prepare a delicious lunch, but we are also visiting Aunt Patty. She always has such tasty candies." Connie smiled with a slight upset, catching herself in the thought that her daughter was obviously not getting enough sweets because they constantly had to save money. 10 minutes later, the mother and daughter were there. Patty was already waiting for them, having put treats on the table and poured a cup of fragrant tea with bergamot. Only Tara did not touch the tea, as she immediately ran to play with Patty's son. Tommy had more than enough toys, and therefore the girl, accustomed to Spartan conditions, was ready to play cars and soldiers, and even to shoot from a toy gun. "Well, tell me, Connie, what brings you?" Patty asked, squinting one eye. "I doubt you left work early just to see me." Connie blushed, embarrassed. Patty had always been perceptive, and Connie could never hide anything from her. "What can I say? Patty, I don't even know where to start." Patty frowned. She had never seen her friend like this before. Sipping her tart tea, Patty decided to let her friend reveal everything in her own time. Fortunately, Connie didn't keep her in suspense for long, and quickly got to the heart of the matter. As she listened, Patty shook her head in disbelief. When Connie finished her story, Patty rested her chin in her hand and asked, "So, what's your next move? You're not planning to warn your ex about the danger, are you? Honestly, I doubt they are planning to harm him physically. It might just be a planned robbery, but catching a slippery fish like your Scott won't be easy, so this duo's success is far from guaranteed." Connie sighed sadly. "I'm not sure if I should tell him or not, Patty. I'm feeling uneasy. Of course, no one ever said that there should be no retribution in life. But what if these people are planning serious crimes, and by keeping quiet, I am indirectly assisting them?" Patty waved her hands in protest. "You're so funny, my friend. You're deep in debate. What's there to ponder? Your husband left you and Tara without a home or money, and disgraced you in front of the whole city. And you're contemplating whether to stay silent? Where's your pride? Imagine him laughing at how he fooled you." Connie shook her head doubtfully. Still, something held her back from revenging her ex-husband. "You know, Patty, I haven't decided yet, but I think I'll tell him the truth and let him decide what to do. Perhaps I'm mistaken, but I believe I'm doing the right thing. Otherwise, I'll lose my peace. My heart is already in turmoil. What if something happens to Scott? No, that's not for me. I'd rather warn him of any impending danger. He's smart enough to figure things out." Patty hummed in disappointment. "Yes, my friend, you're a real stickler. You're too moral, too honest. You know, in life you don't always have to act according to your conscience. Sometimes you might even need to deceive. Otherwise, you'll be devoured by insatiable sharks. And you're as defenseless as a child. You've lost your daughter's alimony due to fake documents. Why don't you get a DNA retest? I told you to hire a lawyer, and you went ahead alone. Now look at the outcome." Connie was hurt by her friend's words. After all, she couldn't change the way she was raised. Her grandmother and mother both earned an honest living, and the woman believed that lies and deceit would always be revealed, no matter how tangled the deception. After a while, Connie said goodbye to Patty and left. Sensing her mother's mood, Tara followed silently. Meanwhile, in Scott Manzarello's office, a different scenario was unfolding. Upon seeing the new cleaner's figure, he meaningfully commented, "With such a resume, I think we'll work well together. But I must warn you, I don't tolerate absences, maternity leave, or any other kind of nonsense. The work is tough, but doesn't require thought, and you'll be paid on time. You get 1 vacation a year, and if we work well together, a 13th month salary. So, take this job seriously." As we know, nothing can be hidden from women, especially when they work in close contact. Therefore, it is natural that Deborah's stylish outfit and exquisite manicure did not go unnoticed. "She looks more like a model. Look how she walks, like she's on the catwalk," a colleague whispered. Scott was immediately attracted to Deborah's beauty and style. Upon meeting her, he forgot about his mistress, Becky, with whom he had left his wife and caused a scandal involving their home and property. Becky was not in the office at the time, which allowed Deborah to charm Scott as she saw fit. She sat on the chair's edge and looked at the director with eyes so captivating he could easily become lost in them. Deborah playfully fluttered her eyelashes, causing a stir in the businessman's heart. She asked, "Do you think there are any career advancement opportunities here? You know, from a cleaner to a higher position? I don't mean right away, maybe in a month or so," she said, and delicately licked her lips. The sound of her voice made Scott break into a sweat. Unintentionally, he reached for his tie to loosen it and breathe in the cool air from the air conditioner. "Actually, we don't usually provide that opportunity for cleaners, but if you need it, I can make adjustments. I'll need your full commitment, though I think you understand what I mean, don't you?" Scott replied, his voice trembling with excitement. Whenever he talked to Deborah, he felt like a high school boy on the first date with an experienced beauty. Deborah was looking at him unblinkingly. Her eyes were as blue as lakes under a clear sky. "Well, thank you for your help, Mr. Manzarello. I'll consider your suggestions, and I hope I won't disappoint you," Deborah said in a languid voice, leaving the office with a graceful stride. Scott's heart pounded like a trapped fish. At that moment, he was ready to leave Becky for the sake of this beauty, who, for some reason, had taken a job in his office. What is this? A calculated plan or a heavenly providence? Scott didn't know that, nor did he know that only a couple of hours ago, this woman, in an entirely different guise, was riding along with his ex-wife Connie and was nothing special. Now the man was captive to this fatal beauty and could think only of her. It should be said that the new cleaner did her job perfectly, and she was able not only to flirt with the boss but also to wash the floor, tidy up the window panes, and steps at the entrance. Surprisingly, but the office staff couldn't pinpoint why they were so drawn to her. Although she wasn't traditionally beautiful and had minor flaws like everyone else, her big blue eyes had a mesmerizing effect. When she looked at someone, they would forget the topic of conversation and become her captive audience. It was akin to a hunting scene, where a graceful predator hypnotizes a fast rabbit with its cold, lifeless eyes. A week passed, and not a day went by without Connie feeling the urge to phone Scott. It was as though an angel and a demon were battling in her heart. She wanted to warn Scott. On the other hand, she did not know what exactly was being talked about in the car. As Connie lost sleep and peace, she began to worry about her ability to drive or the risk of falling asleep at the wheel. That's when she finally decided to call her ex-husband and relay everything truthfully. After her first call went unanswered, she swallowed her pride and dialed again. That's when she heard Scott's disgruntled voice. "Hello, what do you want? We've settled everything, haven't we? I don't have any money. Don't even ask. And I'm not going to take care of someone else's child." Caught off guard, Connie stuttered. "It has nothing to do with the child. And for your information, Tara is your daughter, and you know it. Don't put on a show. Do you think I'm pestering you? I don't need you at all. I'm calling about something entirely different." Scott smirked. "Well, go ahead. What's the other reason? Looking for a job with me? You're too late. I just hired a new cleaner. You could be a janitor, but it's not pleasant. Dust, dirt, cigarette butts, always cleaning up after vagrants. I wouldn't recommend it. Better off driving your car." Connie made a great effort to pull herself together and finally get to the point of her question. "Listen, Scott. This may sound strange, but you're in serious danger. A woman is about to start working in your office, and she's up to no good. She also has an accomplice. I don't know who he is or what he's planning, but you must be vigilant." Scott mocked. "Are you jealous? You must have seen me with the new cleaning lady. Yes, this beauty will surely outshine Becky. Soon, I'll make her a promotion." Connie felt a sudden rush of heat, and cold sweat broke out on her forehead. "A beauty? She's just a woman, riding in the back of my car with a man. What are you even saying? It feels like we're speaking different languages." Scott paused before responding. "Look, if that's all, then let's say goodbye. And don't watch over me. Who I see, whether it's cleaning ladies or others, is my business. You should move on. Find a driver, a trucker, or whoever, and be happy. That's it. Bye." Before Connie could respond, Scott abruptly ended the call. Tears rolled slowly down her cheek. "What a fool you are, Scott. Fine. It's my choice to warn you. The rest is up to you. Do as you please. Just don't involve me in your problems." Surprisingly, the conversation with his ex-wife did not bother Scott. As a businessman, he rarely trusted anyone, especially those he had wronged. Moreover, Scott Manzanello chalked up Connie's reaction to typical female jealousy, which can manifest in the most unexpected ways. Meanwhile, Deborah was making steady progress in her career. In just 2 weeks, she transitioned from a cleaner to a sales trainee. Many employees assumed that her promotion was due to a close relationship with the boss. However, the truth was far from it. If they knew how Deborah achieved her success, they would dismiss it as a fairy tale, fit for tabloid novels. Contrary to the office gossip, Deborah's advancement was not due to any love relationships, but a unique talent she inherited. Her primary tool was her eyes, with which she could read people like an X-ray. Her gaze was so penetrating that few could resist. Typically, people would give in to her assertiveness and undeniable charm. However, Deborah never used her gaze to make anyone do anything illegal, and anyway, the power of her gaze wasn't so powerful that it could control people like puppets, but to make them more compliant or softer was easy. Understanding the potential of her gift, Deborah used it sparingly and only for good reasons. Her partner Danny agreed with her approach. However, he did not possess such a gift and had to rely on his own abilities. While Deborah was becoming the queen of the office, Danny dressed in the clothes of a street hobo and tried to hang out near the company office, studying what was going on and making inconspicuous notes in his small pocket notebook. Of course, no one paid any attention to him, because everyone considered street vagrants as alienated and did not want to waste time on looking at them, and this was only to Danny's advantage. Soon he fixed Scott's license plates, studied his daily routine, and also learned his home address. In fact, in their pair with Deborah, he served as a detective. That is, he studied the behavior of the object of surveillance, pursuing some personal, unknown to anyone's purpose. Meanwhile, Scott finally lost his peace, which did not go unnoticed by his official girlfriend. Becky could not understand what was happening. Why did her suitor suddenly stop giving her gifts, inviting her to the movies or restaurants? If before, Scott every month gave her a diamond ring or something similar, now she could only count on a shabby bouquet of flowers, which the courier brought from the delivery service. Deciding to find out what was the matter, Becky made inquiries in the office and almost immediately learned about the new employee who had won over everyone who had the misfortune to encounter her. "All right, let's see how pretty you are and what you're up to. Are you really going to snag yourself a rich daddy? You'll regret it, because he is mine." Becky sneered as she got ready for the office. She had never seen Deborah before and had no idea who she would be dealing with. However, when Becky finally met Scott's new lover in person, she laughed. What's so special about her? Where's all that beauty? Sure, she has big expressive eyes, but nothing else remarkable. And why does she command everyone here? Becky thought ironically and approached her. At that moment, Deborah was sitting at the table, attentively listening to the senior manager who was training her for a future job. With a smirk, Becky asked, "Well, my dear, are you planning to stay here for a long time, or just passing through?" Deborah raised her eyebrow in surprise and gave Becky a meaningful look. However, her charm had no effect on Scott's mistress. It was a common occurrence, as all people are unique and have their own willpower. Becky never considered herself weak and always fought for her happiness. She had gotten Scott to divorce Connie, and it was she who had suggested the fake DNA test scheme, speculating that the court was unlikely to order a second examination, and simple Connie would probably never figure it out. Realizing she couldn't get along with Scott's mistress, Deborah decided to step back. "Yes, I'll be with you for a while. I plan to build a career in Mr. Manzarello's company. It's critical to me," said the trainee with emphatic respect. However, her apparent submission had no effect on Becky. She quickly realized that the clever cleaner was trying to manipulate her, so she wouldn't interfere with her efforts to establish her place in the office. "Listen, dear, I think you need to clean the entrance steps. They're filthy. Can you start your internship later? I assume there are no objections," said Becky sternly and demeaningly. Deborah pushed aside the papers and went obediently to carry out Becky's instructions. Becky watched her with a mocking look, then turned to the department head. She should pause her internship for now. She has her work cut out for her. Who will clean the floors then? Let her resume her work when there's less to do. The department head embarrassingly tried to say that it was Mr. Manzarello's personal order, but Becky firmly declared, "And I said she won't be interning any more. I think my word is enough for you." The department head nodded in agreement and did not escalate the tense situation. She saw no point in arguing, especially when the final decision was uncertain. After all, Becky had been Mr. Manzarello's favourite for months, while Deborah might fail miserably in this situation. Meantime, there was little change in Connie's life, except that she had finally found peace. She was no longer concerned about Scott's problems. Her ex-husband had been informed, and he needed to decide his next steps. Connie continued working as a cab driver, often accompanied by Tara when there was no one to look after her. Connie would take Tara around the city and to interesting places, sometimes deliberately choosing routes that would entertain the girl. For example, instead of taking the shorter route through the city centre, she would drive down to the embankment so that Tara could enjoy the beautiful view of the river gleaming in the midday sun. Despite her friend Patty's skepticism, Connie decided to give a chance to online dating, but after encountering several individuals with visible tattoos and the smell of alcohol, she decided she wasn't ready for this kind of dating. One day, rushing to another client, Connie noticed the very passenger who was having a conversation with his companion about her ex-husband Scott. It would seem that there was nothing surprising in this, if it were not for the new appearance of this stranger. External changes in him were so striking that Connie did not hold back and even slow down at the curb. The thing was that in such a short time the man had sunk to the bottom and become a street vagrant. His clothes were tattered, his sneakers nearly worn out, and an equally worn cap sat on his head. It was quite a sight. Upon opening the door, Connie quietly called out to the man, who turned and recognized her. "I don't know your name, but do you need some help?" she asked cautiously. Clearly embarrassed, the man quietly replied, "No, thank you. I'm not what you think. I'm not a beggar. It's a different situation." After a moment of thought, Connie invited the man to join her. "Please sit. I won't take much of your time. I overheard part of your conversation with your spouse when I drove you to the hotel. Do you remember?" "Of course I remember," he answered without hesitation. "I recognized you right away. My name is Danny Blanchard. Does my last name ring any bells?" Connie shook her head. "No, it doesn't. Should it?" He grinned. "Our father was a true titan in the business field. He mentored many, helped numerous individuals stand on their own 2 feet. He took Scott Manzarello under his wing as well. My sister Deborah and I weren't heavily involved in business at that time. She was working in tourism, and I was into car racing and other frivolities. My sister and I assumed it would always be this way. Dad would always be there to protect us, pay our bills, cover our expenses. But then he passed away. We discovered at the notary's office, well after his death, that his inheritance had not gone to just anyone, but to Scott, who had been our father's right-hand man. Deborah was abroad when this happened and was unaware of it. When she returned, we found ourselves penniless. Scott had seemingly forged documents and had set the tax office on us. I ended up serving 4 years in prison. All this time, Deborah waited for me, afraid to confront Scott alone. Luckily, he didn't recognize us. You see, my sister was born with abilities we believe she inherited from our grandmother. Recently, Deborah decided it was time for revenge. We changed our names to avoid detection and moved to this town." Connie listened to Danny's story in disbelief. Could it be true that she didn't really know her husband at all? and that Scott, it turns out, had accumulated his wealth through dishonest means. Deciding to be honest with Danny, she told him the truth. "I am sorry to hear about your situation. The thing is, Scott is my ex-husband. He deceived me too, leaving me and our child penniless while he ran off with his mistress. I think it's fair to tell you right away. The thing is, I warned him, but Scott didn't take my words seriously. I won't stand in your way anymore." Danny smiled sympathetically at Connie and said, "I understand. He's a real scoundrel. Don't worry, we won't hurt him physically. We'll deal with him in the same way he conned our father. No blood, no violence. He'll end up in jail just like me and have some time to reflect on his life choices." "So you're not actually a vagrant then?" Connie asked, smiling. Danny grinned. "No, of course not. It's all a sham. Makeup, wig and all. We just need to keep an eye on Scott. Even though Deborah is an expert at her craft, he might still expose her. Soon she'll gain access to his office and inspect his work safe. That's when he'll be punished. There must be irregularities in his business." For some unknown reason, Connie suddenly experienced a strong attack of worry, not for herself, but for this brother and sister, who had decided to challenge Connie's deceitful husband. As it turned out, Connie's intuition was right. Becky, seeing Deborah as a rival, decided to retaliate. She bought a set of hidden cameras and installed them around the office unnoticed. She felt that the cunning cleaner was hiding something, and there's something behind all that romantic stuff. It took about 3 days of waiting before something interesting appeared. After re-watching the video, Becky was taken aback and clutched her head in surprise. The thing was that the recording showed how Deborah had taken advantage of Scott's absence and, in the guise of a cleaning lady, had entered his study. There, she approached the massive safe and began to examine it. Then she took out of her pocket a piece of paper with a cipher written on it. Scott had likely, unwisely, opened the safe in front of Deborah, assuming he could trust this beauty. The safe soon opened with a faint click. Deborah began rifling through the documents expertly, indicating her proficiency in business papers. As this was happening in real time, Becky immediately called Scott, urging him to return to the office. Initially, Scott was dismissive of the idea. "Why should I go there? I just came from there. Yes, Deborah is cleaning my office. What's the big deal? See how she is cleaning it. I think you're in for some interesting revelations today." Becky smiled and hung up the phone. Within 10 minutes, Scott and she were already entering the office where Deborah was examining the contents of her boss's safe. Catching the cleaning lady doing such a thing, Scott turned pale and slammed his fist on the door jamb. "So, this is what you've been up to. What a fool I was, trusting your word while you keep hinting and flirting with me." Deborah recoiled and pressed herself against the wall. "I'm sorry, Scott, but it's not what you think." She attempted to explain, desperately thinking about her next move. However, Scott felt controlling the situation thanks to Becky helping him regain his composure. "I think it's time to call the police and have you locked up for 5 years at least," Scott declared, aiming to further intimidate the hapless cleaning lady. Becky intervened. "No, we don't need the police. They might get their hands on our documents. We need to consider a different approach. I suggest we drive her out of town, leave her without money or identification, and let her find her own way." "Well, that's an interesting idea. Yes, we need to take her somewhere, about 1,000 kilometers away, in the middle of nowhere, and let her go. And something bad might happen to her. Who knows?" Scott agreed readily and smiled. "All right, it's over. You'll never have a place in my company." Suddenly, sirens of police cars could be heard approaching from the street. Scott flinched and looked anxiously towards Becky. "Is that the police? Who called them?" Becky shook her head fearfully. "Not me. I'm not that stupid. Yet." At that moment, Deborah laughed loudly. "Did I fool you, lovebirds? I lured you here cleverly, didn't I? You thought I was working alone, didn't you? I have an assistant. My brother, Danny Blanchard. Does that name mean anything to you?" Scott turned pale and clutched his throat, trying to loosen his tie. "It does. Are you his children? I heard they've disappeared." Meanwhile, Deborah continued to press the frightened businessman. "No, they didn't disappear. I'm Michael Blanchard's daughter. Yes, the very man you left penniless, as well as you left your wife, Connie, right?" "You scum," Becky hissed, but Deborah ignored her threats. "Now, Scott, you will answer for everything. I've caught you and Becky in the act, and you naively thought I didn't know about the hidden cameras. Danny has been watching the office all along. He knew about the CCTV. "You wretch! I'll beat you with my own hands," Scott roared, impotently angry. At that moment the office door opened, and police officers immediately filled the room. Minutes later, handcuffs were placed on Scott's and Becky's wrists. After an officer had examined the company director's safe, which held evidence of false accounting, masterful real estate scams, and shareholder fraud. Deborah grinned and winked at her brother, dressed in the clothes of a tramp. Only now Scott realized that he had become a victim of the very heirs he had deceived, from whom he had once despicably stolen his father's capital. The next morning, Connie learned about all of this from the local TV news broadcast. As she ate breakfast, Tara watched at the TV screen with interest. When her father suddenly appeared, she joyfully shouted, "Mum, look! There's a show with Daddy!" Connie couldn't believe it at first, but as she moved closer, her surprise was immeasurable. "Well, they've got him then," she said with a smile. "Scott and Becky, who used to bully people and felt like real kings in this world, will soon get what they deserve." The investigation into Scott Manzarello's case proceeded swiftly, resulting in both him and Becky standing trial. Scott's mistress received a suspended sentence, while Scott awaited a severe punishment, expecting to serve his entire term in one of the country's northern colonies. To Connie's surprise, justice not only affected the heirs of the late Michael Blanchard, but also her. Unexpectedly, she regained ownership of the house her husband had once taken from her. Danny, with an enigmatic smile, handed her the house keys and an envelope of money for the inconvenience caused. Connie stared at him in disbelief, suspecting that this might be a vivid dream, about to be disrupted by harsh reality. However, no matter how much she rubbed her eyes or pinched her shoulder, reality remained as it was, reflected in Danny's kind and affectionate eyes. However, Connie did not even guess it wasn't Scott or fate who initiated the return of her home, but Danny, who felt pity and sympathy for the unfortunate cab driver raising a young daughter alone. Danny found himself thinking about Connie increasingly often, and one day he gathered the courage to invite her to a restaurant. Naturally, the meeting did not appear romantic, as Connie was accompanied by little Tara, turning the occasion into a joyful adventure. At that moment, Connie did not even suspect that it was from this meeting that a new life would begin. It wasn't the change of job or a return home, but the love and attention Danny showered her with, something she couldn't imagine with her unfaithful husband. Deborah supported Danny's choice, as she had a knack for understanding people. 5 months later, the couple had a modest but tasteful wedding, just as Connie had always wanted. Only the closest people were invited, including Patty and some of Connie's colleagues from the cab service. After the wedding, Connie left the company and together with Danny started their own business. They employed experienced drivers with the latest model cars. Rumour has it that their business is thriving, and those who know Connie barely remember her humble beginnings and her exhausting work in an old yellow car, which led her to meet her future husband. Little Tara is now in school, performing well, and telling her teachers that she will soon have a brother or sister. However, Connie and Danny feel that her joy will be more strong. According to the ultrasound results, Connie is expecting twins. So there's a chance that Tara will have both a brother and a sister at once.